Let's talk about the fourth essay coming up for you. It's called an evaluation. Pretty simple. All of us argue about a best movie or worst movie, a good TV show, bad TV show, rock concert, or whatever. So that's what you're going to be doing here. You're going to be doing an evaluation. But it's not that simple just to say, hey, I like the movie. Let's walk through what's on page 63 for just a few minutes. I said we evaluate lots of things. Basically, it comes down to you may do a functional evaluation, an aesthetic evaluation, or some kind of combination of the two. So functional evaluation, think about the way things work, like your car, your cell phone, something that you have around the house that you work on all the time. Maybe it's a treadmill, something like that. So that would be a functional evaluation. How well does this thing function? How well does it work? Maybe you're going to do an aesthetic evaluation. That's something that appeals to the artistic, creative qualities that we have. So something like a television show, that's aesthetics. That's the laugh that's generated. It's the characters you care about. It's the plot that makes you nervous, wondering what's going to happen next. That's all aesthetics. Now, you could have a combination of the two. So take, for example, a video game. Is there a functionality to a video game? Sure, you bet. How easy is it to work in that world that you're in? How many times can you go back and start over if you die during your adventure and all? So there is a functional part to it. How well does that game work? But there's also the aesthetics, right? How well did they get that world? Does that look really good? Can you see the sun glinting on the water? Can you see shadows of things? So that's kind of a combination, but be thinking about that, a functional evaluation or an aesthetic evaluation. And I give you some examples here, something like a car, a job, a person, a television show, a documentary video. I mean, there's so many things that you can choose. Let's go to the second paragraph because this is crucial. Whatever it is that you're evaluating, you have to set up what's called a criteria, which is a list of the, how do we put it here, the ways that you're going to evaluate it. What are the standards that you're going to use? So let me give you an example of a bad standard, and we'll give you an example of a good standard. So you talk to a friend says, hey, I just read this book. Then you say, what'd you think? And the friend says, I wasn't really crazy about it. You say, oh, really? Why not? And you say, well, it had a blue cover on the front. What? What kind of reason is that to not like a book? Or it was a little heavy. Well, that's not how you measure good books or bad books. So you want to have criteria that works for whatever this thing is that you're going to be evaluating. So an example, we're talking about a book. How do you evaluate a book? Well, let's just do two or three because I want you to think of the others on your own. But you might evaluate it for characters. You might evaluate it for plot, the things that happen. You might evaluate it by setting. Where does it take place? So you always have to have a set of guidelines. How good or how bad is this going to be? So it's a standard that you're putting in. I said, make sure, at the end of the second paragraph, make sure your standards are useful and appropriate. They've got to be appropriate. So for a movie, you don't judge the movie on how long it is. If you say, well, it was 2 hours and 20 minutes. Well, a lot of movies are 2 hours and 20 minutes. You got to come up with different standards than that. Let's go down to the third paragraph. This is all about what's called ethical appeal. So ethical appeal is just a fancy way of saying, how do you strike the reader as the reader is going through your material? How do you come across? Do you come across as somebody who knows what he or she is talking about? So I'll give you an example. If I was to evaluate a novel, I would feel pretty confident because I've read a lot, and especially if it's in an area like science fiction or history or something like that, I would feel very comfortable doing a book review. But turn me loose in an art gallery and tell me to go look at 3 or 4 or 5 paintings that are on the wall, I'm lost. I don't know art that well. I'd look at it and say, well, I like it or I don't like it, but I wouldn't really have a good set of standards. So it's going to be crucial when whatever it is you pick, make sure you come across as the expert. So maybe if you're going to evaluate a car, Why should we trust you? If you're going to evaluate a television show, why should we believe what you say about that television show? So you've got to keep, I always call it flashing your badge. Like if somebody comes to your door and you look through and you say, who is it? And they say, it's a highway patrol. You're going to say, can I see some proof? And they'll flash the badge. So you don't let them in. You don't even talk to them unless somebody can show you their credentials. So the same thing here. Make sure you show the reader your credentials. Why are you taking on this topic? What is it that you know? Have you experienced something in that field? If it's a television show, have you watched all 5 seasons of it? If it's something like a music genre, do you collect music in that genre? Do you play your own instrument in that genre? So we've got to trust you. So that's hugely important. Let's take a look at some sample evaluation essays I'd like you to read. First one is on page 64. It's called The Myth of Multitasking. And you're all so good. I'm not very good at it, but you're all so good. You can talk on the phone, and at the same time you can be at the computer, and you can be on your social media site or whatever it is. That's called multitasking. You can do more than one thing at a time. So here's somebody, it's Christine Rosen is her name. She's going to evaluate what this is like for us today to be multitaskers. And you may be surprised. I don't know what you think about that. But so that's one I'd like you to read. There's a second one on page 69. It's called A Closer Look at a Bestseller. Years ago, you may not remember this, but years ago there was a book that came out hugely popular. It became one of the, I think, top 10 best-selling books of all time. It was called The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. And it's a terrific read. It's a lot of fun. It's a mystery. It's a chase. It's trying to figure out what's going on here. People are getting murdered, and others are running from the police and all. So it's a really fun read. However, as you get further into the book, it starts getting into the New Testament, Christianity, the life of Jesus, the disciples, the early church councils, historical documents, manuscript evidence. And it becomes it has a particular view about Jesus and his biographies as told by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who are called the four Gospels, four writers of the Gospels. And those Gospels are supposed to be accurate renditions of the life of Jesus. And so I've taught the Bible as literature for years, so I spent a lot of time reading the New Testament. And when I read the Da Vinci Code, and I read other people talking about the Da Vinci Code, I thought, I have to say something about it, because Dan Brown, for all that he's trying to do and make it a fun read, when he gets into areas of religion, he's way off base. And so I want to show you some of the problems that I think are in that book. So that's my evaluation of Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. On page 72, I'm not sure we're going to have a time for this, but I did a book review of a science fiction book called Ariel. And it's a long story, so I won't tell you the whole story, but I'll just tell you this. Take chances in your life. Stretch yourself. I got involved in taking on a challenge of writing some book reviews. And I was busy at the time. I was doing a lot of other things. I'd never done book reviews like this, and it led to some really fun things. So I won't go into the details of all of that right now, but one of the books I was asked to evaluate was called Ariel. So here's my review of the book Ariel. And then I thought you might find it interesting. James Cameron has done very well for himself with Avatar and then the follow-up Avatar movie. So I thought it might be interesting to see what 2 different reviewers have to say about the original Avatar movie. So if you've seen it, you probably have your opinion of it. I'll just tell you this, you can guess. One person thinks it's amazing, it's a real breakthrough movie, and it's one of the 10 best of all time. Another person acknowledges that it does have some good features, but And so he's got a few negative things to say about it. So that's what I'd like you to take a look at for your evaluation essay. So I'll add this, I'll attach this to the other part that introduced what you're supposed to do with your evaluation essay. So we'll put these 2 together. Okay, thanks.